Hi, I'm Greg Cassidy, and welcome to my workshop. I'm glad that you found my channel, and I hope that you've watched one or more of the videos that I have posted. I've reached the milestone of 1,000 subscribers, and I want to thank each and every one of you who has subscribed and helped me reach that point. To commemorate that, I put together a short video showing many of the kits and some of the how-tos that I've made. If you see anything here that you like, you know that you can find that video on my channel. And I hope that watching my videos you might get entertained and maybe you might learn something. And I want to thank you again for coming to my channel. And just as my workbench has changed over the years, so has my modeling and what I've been willing to tackle and able to accomplish. And my hope is that you see a video here that might entice you to go watch the whole thing. And I hope that you'll be entertained by it. And I especially want to thank you if you're a subscriber. Let's start with my build videos. This is the first Medford Trains kit that I built, and it was their mail pouch barn. And I built this as a small diorama showing a barn that had seen better days and was falling apart. Next is another Medford Trains kit, the Western Maryland Station in Glenville, Pennsylvania. I also built this into a small diorama. And once I was done with it, I took it up to Glenville and took a few pictures of it in the actual location where the station used to stand. This is the Elkins station made by Carolina Craftsman Kits. And I built this station for a friend's layout who models the Western Maryland. We put a full interior and lighting into the upper floor since it would be easily seen. This is also a Carolina Craftsman Kits, their version of the Thomas station in Thomas, West Virginia. And this also was built for a friend's layout who was modeling the Western Maryland. This was built for Jeff Grove's layout. He's the owner of Carolina Craftsman Kit, and this was his station in Deal, Pennsylvania. And this was also along the Western Maryland line. This is a Conowingo Models kit. It's their version of a small store that's in Painter, Virginia. The store has been through a couple of hands. It's now a consignment store. Now this kit is from Railscale Models, and it's their version of Shorty's service station. I made a couple minor modifications and again built a small diorama out of it. Next is a diorama that I built out of two small Conowingo Models kits. This is their version of what's called Crunge Bridge. It's a swayback bridge that he put out, and this is called Whispering Chapel. It's a replica of the chapel found in Eastern Europe. I built those two kits and then built a diorama to put them on. And I included some water features and trees and the appropriate scenery. And they just seem to go very well together on this diorama. Next is a scratch build that I did in O-scale for a friend who has a very large Pennsylvania Railroad layout. And he needed a scale house. And this is based on the one in Mount Union, Pennsylvania. And we had diagrams to go by, so it's a pretty accurate representation of it. Now these three company houses came from Conowingo Models. And they're all the same kit. They're Gray House kit. And I had built one as a company house, and then I got 3 more, and by modifying each one a little bit, I made 4 company houses. Next is the general store kit from Blairline. I didn't modify this very much, but I built it as a store that had seen better days and finally had to close. So everything's boarded up and there's no business going on here anymore. This is a bar from Downtown Deco. I built this for a friend's layout and only did a couple minor modifications to it. This is a Hydrocal kit that was very easy to build. Now this bridge is from Hunterline, and it's their King Post bridge. And it's fun just playing with the wood and trying to get the right textures and look. Brittner's Garage is another CCK kit that I added a number of details to, including some gas pumps from Interaction Hobbies and some other parts. And I detailed the interior and then added lighting inside it. And I'm very happy with the way it came out. Now this tobacco barn is from Railscale Models, and it was a fun little kit to build, again getting to play with wood textures and coloring. And like many of my builds, I put it on a small diorama. This next one is from ITLA Scale Models, and I built it to represent a commercial printing plant that I worked at for many years. His kits are a little different. They're laser cut out of MDF, and they're fun to put together. Now next I have 2 kits that are identical from Carolina Craftsman Kit that I built for 2 different friends' layouts. This was the Western Maryland Train Order Office in Laurel Bank, West Virginia, and building 2 of them meant I had twice as much fun. Next we have a depot from Motrack Models, and I had built this one to represent a coffee shop that was alongside abandoned tracks that had been turned into a rail trail. And I used a bunch of detail parts from mini prints to help bring my coffee shop to life. Now these structures are another set from Carolina Craftsman Kits that went along with the Laurel Bank Train Order Office. This was the bunkhouse that was there. Now this critter came from Conowingo Models, and it was based on an AHM chassis for the drive, and then laser cut parts to form the cab, and I added some details in back. These are 3 more company houses that I built for a friend, and these are again from Carolina Craftsman Kits. It's a 3-pack. And it was fun modifying each one so it was a little different and had its own unique personality. Now we have a Pennsylvania Railroad tower from Altoona Model Works. This was a resin kit in O-scale. It was a challenge to put together, but I'm really happy with how it came out. Now this fire station was part of a Nutrax build-along, and this is a Motrack Models kit, and I had a 5-part presentation showing how I built it on Nutrax modeling. And this kit was in S-scale. Next we have a general store that's from Microscale Models. This was a very detailed, very involved kit to build, but it came out fantastic, I think. And it went to a friend's layout. Next I have an O-scale depot that came from Sidetrack Laser. And again, I built this for a friend, and he's modeling the East Broad Top, so this will be a depot on his layout. Now these 2 buildings were from AMB, also known as Laser Kits, and they're going to a friend's layout. And they just happen to match 2 that I had built in the past for myself. Next was one of the smaller buildings I had made. From GC Lasers, it was a privy, and I had a diorama of a station that I needed this for. So it was fun building it, and later you'll see the diorama that it ended up going on. Next, I had built a lighthouse, and this again was from Conowingo Models. And after building the lighthouse and adding sound and light to it from Evans Designs, I decided to build a small diorama that it could sit on. And this ended up coming out quite nice. Now Annie's lunch counter is from Nick and Nora Designs, and I had a lot of fun detailing the interior of this building. With that big window in front, I knew I was going to have to add lighting and an interior to it, and it went to a friend's layout. Now this was a quick scratch build where a friend of mine had a base and he needed a building on it. So I said, how about I make a scale house for it? And it's now on his layout next to a small scale. Now these next three kits are in N scale, and they're all from Mud Creek Models. This is their barn, and it was the first one I did. And these were all built from my Model Railroad Club's N-scale layout that we take to shows with us. This was the second one, and it's Natalie's freight house. And I was able to modify it a little bit by extending the roof and extending the loading dock some. And the third one I built was their general store. And this gave me the opportunity to add a lot of signs to it and do a little bit of an interior inside it. And all three of these are on our club's layout now. Now this was one of the first Medford train kits that I had built. And it was his Old Town station and tool house. I ended up building one of my first big dioramas out of these. And this was where my privy ended up going when I was done with it. So those are some of the build videos that I have on my channel. But I've also done a number of how-tos, and I'll show you some of those next. This was a quick demo I put together for my Model Railroad Club, showing how I use pressure-sensitive adhesive. I find it a very useful tool, and this just shows one example of how I use it. A while back, I did a couple of presentations on Nutrax Modeling online show about making and mounting signs. I first went through how I print them and how I make them look rusted if they're a metal sign, or make them look faded if they're supposed to be a paper or a painted sign, and then how to mount them onto different buildings such as clapboard or brick. And I included going into the computer process of making signs. At one point I had gotten a couple different sets of watercolor pencils, and while I'm no expert at using them, I did a comparison between the two sets, found some minor differences, but mostly I was showing how to use them. I find them very useful in different weathering techniques. I've often used Copic markers for shading a variety of different things, and I put together a video on how I shade stonework using them, but they're much more versatile than that. I did a quick how-to on using ferric chloride for rusting metal panels to be used on siding or roofing for a building. And I showed how I did it and then applied them to a barn that I had built. I've also used distress crayons for putting mortar in between brick joints and a number of other things where you can use them for weathering. I think they're one of the best things you can use for mortar in between brick joints depending on what material you're using. And I have a couple of videos showing them. And of course, where would I be without my Ultimation tools? I love these things, and I have a video showing not only how I use them, but how to maintain them. And at one point I painted a brass caboose, and I put together an entire video showing how I stripped it and then primed it and painted it. And it ended up coming out better than I had ever expected. And I don't just model and model railroading. One of my other passions is building a Spooky Town display every year for trick-or-treaters to come see. This was one of the kits that I built for my Spooky Town display. It started out as a fountain, probably for a military model, but I ended up making it look like it was filled with a green sludge, and it will go perfect on my Spooky Town display. And speaking of which, this is a quick example of how I set up my Spooky Town, and every year I let trick-or-treaters come in to see it. I always have 4 or 5 sections set up on my display, and that's because I have way too many pieces to show them all each year. And if you're going to display Spooky Town pieces, you're going to end up repairing them at some point. I put together a few videos showing either how I've repaired pieces, if they have a broken gear, or a broken wire, or a motor that went out, or sometimes I just modify one, either to make it more to my liking, or to fit in better in my display. And while this isn't necessarily model railroading, it is still a form of modeling that I very much enjoy. And speaking of which, this is where it all started. Many years ago, I built an HO scale layout. And this was based on the Western Maryland Railway in the Cumberland, Maryland area. This is a video of the layout. And while I still operate trains on it now and then, I found that during building the entire layout, the structure building was what I enjoyed the most. And that's why I've carried on doing that. And of course, there's no room on the layout anymore for structures. So if I build them for myself, they end up going on a shelf. But that's why I enjoy building them for other friends. And I want to thank you very much for watching this video, and especially for being a subscriber. I really appreciate it.